There's a reason the public isn't supposed to see what's inside those sealed files. Every time someone gets close, the story twists, the noise rises, and the people at the top suddenly go quiet. One Morning Post lit the match, a casual nothing to see here from someone who used to promise full transparency. Within hours, reporters claimed the files had names, videos, and evidence that could change everything. Then came the silence. The people who once demanded openness started acting like they'd never heard of it, and that's when a single voice inside Congress decided to break the pattern. Dan Goldman didn't walk into that hearing to play politics.
To observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out in parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to know whether he is or not.
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman, I would, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11.
Gentleman is not recognized. Your time has expired.
I have a motion,
Mr. Garbarino,
Mr. Chairman.
Recognized for questioning.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman has a motion.
Pursuant to Clause 2K6 of Rule 11, I move that the committee subpoena Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the
Chairman, motion to table.
Gentleman has a motion.
Motion to table.
Motion to table is privileged and non-debatable.
He walked in with documents, laws, and a question that made everyone in the room sit still. Why are these files hidden? Who made that decision? Because just a few years ago, every person on that committee swore they wanted the truth released to the public. They promised sunlight, they promised justice, they promised transparency. Now those same people stare at the table every time the word Epstein is mentioned. The air was thick before he even spoke. Reporters leaned forward, cameras zoomed in. It wasn't just another oversight session, it was a collision between what America's been told and what's actually being protected. He began calmly reminding everyone that real oversight means looking at current abuses of power, not rehearsing old talking points about someone who left office 7 months ago. Then, without raising his voice, he turned the spotlight toward something no one wanted discussed. While certain members kept replaying political grievances, thousands of lawful residents were being detained in overcrowded, unsafe facilities, some not even accused of a crime. Families separated, asylum seekers locked up, congressional visits denied. These weren't rumors, they were documented facts, and yet the department responsible refused to allow members of Congress to inspect those centers, a direct violation of federal law. Goldman paused, let that sink in, then asked the question that flipped the room. If this committee claims to care about oversight, why ignore what's right in front of us? But before anyone could interrupt, he pivoted to something far more radioactive. He called out a name that's been missing from the headlines, the official once at the center of the promise to release the Epstein files. She said she had them on her desk. She said transparency mattered. She said the American people had a right to know. But now, after a months-long review, she claims there's nothing to see. The timing couldn't be more suspicious. One moment, every headline demands release, the next, the story's buried. The public is told to move on. Goldman didn't buy it. He reminded the committee that the same people who used to shout "release the files" are now blocking their publication. Some even voted against it. Think about that, the very lawmakers who once promised answers are now protecting secrecy. It was a moment of pure contradiction that no one could explain. He lifted the subpoena in his hand like evidence of how far this had gone. That document wasn't just paper, it was a statement, a refusal to let power rewrite its own story. Behind him, staffers shifted, cameras clicked, and you could see the unease ripple through the room. The ones who had cheered for exposure now looked anywhere but forward. Then came the line that froze the hearing. Goldman asked, "What changed?" Because years ago everyone wanted those files public, names, connections, accomplices, all of it. But suddenly, after a quiet internal review, the conclusion was that nothing of interest exists. No misconduct, no leads, no reason to dig deeper. It was too perfect, too convenient. And here's where the story gets darker. Multiple journalists claim that those files include compromising material involving high-profile figures, names you know, faces that appear on magazine covers. Social media lit up when one tech billionaire hinted that someone powerful was blocking the release. The claim spread fast, and within hours fact-checkers scrambled to deny it. But the post remained up, fueling speculation. Could it be true? Or was it just another distraction designed to make people doubt what's real? Goldman didn't need to say names. Everyone knew what he was implying. The connections between certain elites and Epstein have been public for decades. Flights, photos, parties. Yet the official line is that none of it matters, that there's no credible evidence of wrongdoing. Still, the files stay sealed, the witnesses stay quiet, and the questions multiply. He leaned in and said something that cut through all the noise. If there's really nothing there, why hide it? That sentence hit harder than any accusation, because if innocence was certain, transparency would be easy. Instead, what we're seeing is the opposite. Deflection, denial, delay. From that moment, the hearing wasn't about immigration, or oversight, or budget reports anymore. It was about control, who gets to decide what the public knows and what stays buried. The committee chair tried to interrupt, to move the discussion back to approved topics, but Goldman kept going. He cited the law. He cited oversight authority. He reminded everyone that Congress exists to hold power accountable, not to protect it. And that's when the shift happened. Some members began glancing nervously at their aides. Others started shuffling papers, pretending to be busy. The atmosphere turned from defensive to panicked. Every word he spoke peeled back another layer of hypocrisy. He wasn't yelling. He didn't need to. The facts spoke for themselves. He quoted official statements where those same figures once demanded that all Epstein-related evidence be made public for the sake of justice. He showed how after gaining control of key departments, they reversed course. Suddenly those documents became classified reviews. Suddenly no one could comment. Suddenly transparency was labeled partisan. The pivot was glaring, and the silence afterward was even louder. Behind the scenes, aides whispered, phones buzzed, and a few committee members started leaving the room, but Goldman stayed locked in. He wasn't there for theater, he was there for answers. He wanted to know why a set of files that could expose the full network behind Epstein's crimes had disappeared into bureaucratic shadows. Why the same names that once demanded exposure were now writing memos about ongoing investigations and insufficient evidence. He connected it back to the larger issue: how government resources are being used to chase powerless people while shielding the powerful. Agents pulled off cases involving violent crime and reassigned to immigration raids. Oversight requests ignored. Journalists threatened with legal action for asking the wrong questions. It painted a chilling picture of what happens when accountability is selective. And that's when Goldman delivered his final blow. He said, "This isn't about politics, it's about power. When you protect the powerful and punish the powerless, you don't serve the law, you serve yourself." The room fell silent. It wasn't just rhetoric, it was a mirror held up to everyone sitting there. That one sentence reframed everything. Because it's easy to talk about law and order until the law starts asking questions that hit too close to home. And that's the story behind the silence. Not ideology, but fear. Fear of what those sealed documents could reveal. Fear of how many careers, alliances, and reputations could collapse if even a fraction of those rumors turned out to be true. When Goldman finished, the chairman quickly moved to adjourn. Staff rushed to pack up notes. Cameras caught the discomfort on faces that rarely show emotion. Reporters shouted questions that no one answered. The subpoenas were filed, but whether the documents will ever see the light of day, that's another question entirely. Outside the hearing, the reaction was electric. Clips went viral within minutes. Hashtags demanding the release of the files trended globally. Viewers weren't just watching a committee debate, they were watching the cracks in the system widen in real time. For the first time in years, someone inside Congress had dared to ask the question millions have been whispering. And that's why this moment matters. It's not just about one investigation, one scandal, or one politician. It's about whether truth still has a place in public life. Because if secrets like this can stay buried, if powerful people can rewrite history with a single memo, then every promise of transparency is just performance. What's unfolding now isn't the end of a story, it's the start of a reckoning. More subpoenas are coming, more witnesses will be called, and every attempt to shut it down will only make the public hungrier for answers. Because the harder they try to hide something, the louder people start asking, why? Maybe those files will stay sealed for months, maybe years. But history has a pattern. Truth always leaks. Someone always talks. And when that happens, the people who thought they buried the past learn the same painful lesson: secrets don't stay secret forever. If you've made it this far, you already understand why this story can't disappear. It's not about headlines, it's about accountability. The world's most powerful institutions work overtime to convince us that justice is complicated. But it isn't. It's simple. If you did wrong, you face the truth. And if you didn't, transparency clears your name. Either way, hiding the evidence serves no one but the guilty. So here's the question that will define what happens next: will the public demand answers loud enough to break through the silence? Because that's the only way these files ever see daylight. Not through quiet negotiations, not through polite requests, through pressure, through millions of voices refusing to be gaslit. And that's where you come in. Every view, every share, every comment amplifies the call for truth. When information is hidden, attention becomes power. When institutions lie, exposure becomes justice. You have more influence than you think. Because the one thing the powerful fear more than subpoenas is collective awareness. So don't just watch this story unfold, be part of it. Share this video, like it. Comment your thoughts below. Subscribe for updates as this investigation deepens, because silence protects no one, and justice only works when we demand it together.